Today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. So this board today is full of surprises. Its actual announcement and sale really came as a surprise as well. This is the Zoom65 from Meletrix, a new entry-level sub-brand of Wuque Studio, the company behind the Icky 68 and the Mammoth 75. This was announced out of nowhere on December 25th with a 100-unit in-stock sale that went live on the 29th, and they sold out within seconds. Luckily, this first run was just kind of a teaser. They plan on stocking these on a regular basis, with the next restock coming like end of January, early February. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here, but let's just frame this up right out of the gate. This is an entry-level board designed to give you some of the features and aesthetic of a higher-end board. If you have a higher-end 65% already, there's no reason to FOMO into this unless you just really like the look. This is $179 US for a fully inclusive kit, meaning you get stabilizers, switches, and caps for that price. Full disclosure, the DHL direct shipping from China on this was a nightmare at 55 bucks. That's no fault of Meletrix, it's just the way things are right now. So the true consumer cost on this run was $235 delivered to your door, but in the future, they plan on having localized vendors in 10 different regions to help cut down on that. Regardless of the shipping cost, what you get in this kit is pretty wild. This is a hot swap gasket mount 65% layout with a 6.5 degree typing angle and a front case height of 2 centimeters. This version is obviously white. It appears to be some sort of paint process, and there is glitter in the paint, but that sparkle effect isn't really noticeable when it's just sitting on the desk. You have to get really close or shine some light on it. The process on this copy is really clean. You'd have to go poking around with a macro lens to find any imperfections. It also has an aluminum weight bar on the back with a satin finish. This gives the look of a much more expensive board without breaking the bank, and fully built, this board weighs in at just over 1.2 kilos. The PCB is pretty thin, it's got flex cuts, it's mostly south-facing KO hot swap sockets with no RGB, no per key, no underglow. It does have a rotary encoder and the tiniest, well, second tiniest knob I've ever seen. We also see crazy layout support here where you can have split backspace, right shift, go full ISO, step caps, split spacebar, whatever. Like the Icky 68, this involves having some switches completely rotated to north facing or simply rotated 90 degrees in some cases. There are some important conditions to all this layout functionality, which we'll talk about in just a sec. Plate here is polycarb, it's very flexible. This should look really familiar if you've seen anything from Wuque before. You also get their WS series stabilizers included. These are special low profile stabs designed by Wuque for their thinner PCBs, and the wire clips in on the underside. They not only include stab pads, but also pre-cut Teflon pads as holy mod pads if you want to go that way with it, and it's way easier than cutting down band-aids. These are more basic versus their premium version, as we don't get the gold wires here, but functionally they're still the same, and you will have to lube these. They've also included switches here, one of the newer budget switches from JWK. They're branded J-Wick on the top housing, but the materials are listed a bit different from the J-Wicks in market. So we've got a PC top, a nylon bottom with a palm stem. Spring is 63.5 grams, and they are factory lubed. Normally I would just lube these, but I wanted to hear them straight out of the box as intended. Not only do they feel pretty good, but they sound pretty great installed as well, and that's because this board is loaded, and I mean utterly packed with Poron. So we've got a thin PCB sheet, a plate PCB foam, a thick slab for the back of the PCB, and no less than 6 separate pieces for the lower portion of the case, plus all the gaskets, which you'll need to install yourself. This is a very DIY kit. It feels like you're building a board from scratch. I'm not going to reproduce the build guide here, just know that there is a build guide. Use the build guide. I can't stress it enough. You might know what you're doing, maybe you've built a bajillion boards before, that's cool. Use the build guide. Use the build guide. The only thing that was a challenge is that you have to pull switches to seat the case screws, and they don't magnetize very well to your screwdriver, so you risk dropping them into one of the switch holes and into the board. You'll want to be careful around these edges too, because the coating can be pretty easy to scuff with a screwdriver. We also get keycaps in the classic Olivia colorway, but in double shot PBT, and there's a lot of conditions here. Firstly, yes, this colorway is in fact authorized by Olivia herself, but it's really important to know that these early runs of these are not the final form of these keycaps. Wuque is currently working on their own double shot PBT process and their own molds, so these are basically a placeholder. If you frequent places where clone keycaps are sold, you've probably seen these before, though Wuque is not advertising the manufacturer on these. The colors seem accurate, but that's about as much positive as I can say for these. We have inconsistencies on the legends, like the W on the Win key is a good example, but even the alphas all have different font weights and positioning. These will stand up to a passing glance, but if you have OCD tendencies, you will start to notice more stuff the longer you look. There's some exaggerated gaps on the side of the spacebar. This row right here is pretty sloppy. The spacing in between the caps on the alphas is pretty inconsistent, etc. They're pretty rough. Another big thing to note here is that while this board offers a lot of different layout options, only standard ANSI layout is supported by the keycaps. So there's no stepped caps, no support for split options. You get exactly enough caps for coverage of the default ANSI layout and no more. They actually do include 4 extra switches if you want to take advantage of some of that stuff, but no included stabs for the split spacebar either. It's unfortunate because it just kind of rubs you the wrong way. Like if they had just provided a default layout, that was it, no more, no less, it wouldn't even be a conversation. It's specifically because they included this higher tier of functionality and then didn't follow through to fully support it that leaves a bad taste. So I really hope that when they get their own keycap process sorted out, the future kits include everything you need to take advantage of all of the layout options. Lastly, you also get this smooth faux Alcantara carry case similar to the one on the Icky 68 and a coiled cable. All right, let's see how this sounds. Okay, so that sounds like I tape modded the PCB when I definitely didn't. This has a thawky sound for sure in this configuration, and for the first go, I did run every bit of pour-on foam in there because that's Wuque's recommended config. I did try it with just the rear thick PCB foam removed, but they sound really similar, as you heard, probably because that thin sheet under the switches is pretty OP in determining the sound. The mods sound okay, backspace sounds really thin, and the spacebar is more dampened on one side than the other, but that's definitely the included spacebar. The GMK bar sounds more consistent to me for sure. You can see plenty of flex if you push around on the board. You don't really feel this in typing because it's all really compressed, but the bottom out is still nice and soft. Removing that rear foam gave just a little flex back, but nothing substantial. The sound of the board is absolutely subjective, and I could do 10 or 12 different sound tests with varying degrees of foam in there, but a lot of people are tweaking their boards right now to sound exactly like this, so I'm honestly pretty happy with it right out of the box. Not having a daughter board here is no issue. The cable is center mounted, and there is a bit of recess here, so you don't have a bunch of connector hanging out. I like the little angle on the case, the rounded edges, and the uniform bezels. I do like the look of the little knob, but it's so small, it's tough to get my fingers around it. Stop it. It would work best if you just tried to like rub it from the side. The downside here is that when you do that, it makes contact with the opening on the case, so I really worry about the long-term durability of the finish in that spot. All in all though, keeping perspective on what this board is intended to be, I think it's a win. It feels like there's a lot of value here, even ignoring the fact that this is not a bare bones kit. It does give the appearance of a higher end board, and to me it sounds good, and it's stock config. The only thing here that would give me pause is waiting for them to do the actual legit run of these Olivia caps if having that colorway is important to you. These are really rough. I don't want to undersell or downplay that. I feel like this sets a new benchmark in the entry-level segment, and evidently that's where we're going to continue to see the most growth, and I'm for anything that encourages more people to come over to the space. One thing that really stuck out to me here is that because the build process is so involved on this board, you really get to experience a lot of what it's like to build and tune a board. Like if this is your first board, you can learn a lot about the hobby in one go. So there it is. It's certainly not perfect, and I hope they get their shipping sorted out sooner than later, but I'm much more impressed with this little board than I thought I'd be. It's an easy recommendation for someone looking to get into the hobby or to move up from one of the all-plastic entry-level boards. I want to say a big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of inspiring classes for people who want to learn new skills and explore their creativity. I always appreciate the opportunity to partner with Skillshare because they've really been a part of my journey as a creative. I'm 100% self-taught in all this, so lighting, photography, videography, and editing. You could go source all that information in pieces from around the internet, and there are some really talented creators out there for sure, but Skillshare has always been a source of really well-organized, straight to the point, high-quality information. All the classes are presented completely free of ads, so I can stay focused up when I'm learning, and the entire catalog is now available with subtitles in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and German. If you're an aspiring YouTuber, you should definitely check out the class YouTube Success with MKBHD. It gives you a great overview on production workflow, like his actual start-to-finish workflow. That's a hugely important component to success. It's something as a creator you're constantly refining. It's really cool to see it on a large scale, so you can come away with actionable ideas about about how to improve your own efficiency. Skillshare launches new premium classes every week, so there's always something new, and the classes are available at every skill level, so it doesn't feel intimidating if you're new to whatever you're pursuing. The first 1,000 of you that click the link down in the description will get access to a full 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can see what it's all about, start exploring and improving your creativity today. Big thanks to Skillshare for continuing to support the channel, and thank you so much for your time. If you want to check out some videos that aren't about keyboards, you can do that right here, and I'd really encourage you to come by the private Discord for Patreon supporters. We're building an awesome community in there, and you can check that out right here. Thanks again to Skillshare. That's it for today, and I will catch you all in the next one. Stay up.